Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Squadron 42's monthly report was emailed out, and here is what was said. As always, huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. If you do enjoy my content and would like to support the channel even further from as little as $1 a month, it is all very much appreciated. All the links are in the description below. So kicking off with AI content, the designers further developed the Macedo station, that's the big comm array, supporting the creation of several usables required for the mission story. This also allowed them to set up the stocked AI that interact with usables for the first time, for example, attack spot, search spot, rail lean, door opening interactions, console hacking, stair spot, and more. Next, they will implement them into the level, finish the cryopod interactions, and make use of the first reaction system to allow transitions from systemic behaviors to the combat activity. Now, the animation team progressed with player idles to ensure that when the player character is standing still, they're not just like an inanimate mannequin, which is a nice little touch. Development of zero-G movement continued along with the medical pen, wake up, medical beds, player jumping, and the drunk locomotion set. Hopefully they can just tune those up a little bit and make them less clunky and awkward. AI wise, the team closed out wild lines and improved seating poses in the mess hall to make it look like a real cafeteria. The male hurt locomotion set was completed, with the team moving on to the female set, most likely needed for 3.15 as well, with the medical gameplay coming online. They're also currently editing duking assets for combat, assets for perception reactions from usables, and Vanduul combat locomotion. A mocap shoot was also conducted to gather content needed for the work mentioned above, with the team currently working through the results. And finally, the facial team continued with the character improvements mentioned in previous reports. Now onto character art. The team wrapped up the final rules for the modularity system for the Screaming Galsons, creating initial loadouts to test the system and provide placeholder characters for the designers when they begin working on related gameplay. And although the team is moving on to higher priority tasks in Q3, they will return to the Screaming Galsons later on to flesh out the assets and create the required bespoke characters. The Screaming Galsons, I think, are another pirate group similar to the OMC, but obviously with different style and maybe different actions and approaches to things. We will have to see. Agent Trejo's outfit and helmet are now in the final stages of modelling and will be ready for the tech artists to skin. Once completed, they will focus on Chapter 1, which includes major characters like Bishop, Wade, McLean, and Mason. I think what they're doing right now is just creating the final version of the outfits for all the characters, just going through them one by one. Now onto environment art. The team continued to work towards their quarterly milestone. The planetary work made significant strides, with the team prepping to focus on secondary points of interest to allow level design to progress with their primary objective. Now, although this is Squadron 42 specific that they're talking about, I am just waiting for the day that they begin implementing more points of interest in the PU, like towns, villages, settlements, and so much more. Now Crusader and Orison are in, I think that is next on their list. The interior of the Bengal carrier is approaching completion, with the team closing out several small iterations in support of cinematics and gameplay story, making the main hangar feel alive, lived in, and like there's a process to launching ships. And finally, the Acheron station received further interior and exterior work, while chapters 15 and 19 made great progress. It is going to be so cool seeing that Acheron station Archon station for the first time. That is that huge, 3 or 6 kilometer mining station. What a beast that is. I hope we get to see them in the verse later on as well. Now in weapon art, the development of the standalone Greycat tractor beam and salvage tool continued, with the art team beginning the animation pass and finished iterating on the rigs. I loved the look of these dedicated tools. I will certainly be purchasing all of them when they finally arrive in the PU. For the audio team, they worked alongside Squadron 42's composer Geoff Zanelli to produce music for Chapter 4, as well as recording additional dialogue. In cinematics, one major focus was on a cutaway that introduces the player to a remote mining outpost that features the player and Old Man Colton, who is the Mark Hamill character, flying their gladiuses towards this outpost located on a remote asteroid in the Odin system. As the art for this location is still in progress, the team built a previs blockout to inform how the scene will play out and how it should look and feel. That sounds like a really cool location. Looking forward to that mission. Also, a lot of animation polish was completed as scenes progressed from implementation to the production pass, with one key scene receiving an arms, hands and fingers contact pass to add significant impact to the character's interaction. So maybe they're zoomed in on whatever the character's doing and making it look as good as possible. Now, on to engine work. Now, I will thank my techie friend for all the information here that he has provided. He is actually in a hospital bed right now, so prayers go out to him. Basically, the physics team moved the generation of SURFL data used for radar cross-section queries to an offline pre-computation step in the resource compiler, which optimizes various types of assets like textures, meshes, sounds, and metadata for final consumption in-game. All tiers of physics geometry was completed, and as a result, the cloning and sharing of brush physics was enabled, leading to physics now only using 50% of the memory it previously had on the client and server, which was achieved by sharing all common geometry related data across all clones of the same static instance. This basically means that anything with the same physics applied in one area can now just be one batch file to the CPU. So for example, let's say Orison has 10 streetlights. Before, each streetlight will have to be batched to the CPU separately to create it. Now all this info is shared, so it knows just to copy them from one without having to calculate them all separately. Networking related data was moved between internal structures for more efficient access and synchronization, along with structure size and alignment optimizations to ensure hot numbers are always on the same cache line. Page sizes for event factories were tuned, resulting in a net gain of 100 megabytes in system memory. The physics queue for the biome builder was reduced, several areas of thread contention were reduced, and a race condition in the optimized priority queue was fixed as well. And finally, the precision of quantized bounding volume hierarchy trees were improved. Basically, they are talking about CPU cache here. Hot members are the most important information needed for the next frame to be drawn from the RAM to CPU cache to then be used in the next frame. So to make sure that you gain the most out of everything, hot members are always drawn within 64 bytes, making sure the CPU is not wasting potential by having things in cache that are not needed anymore. Now, with regards to volumetric clouds, the rendering of secondary views, including clouds, was addressed. Computation of the narrow band sign distance field for cloud cover has been revised, along with the generation of associated MIP maps in a signed format. And an initial set of quality options was exposed in the game menu, and these quality settings will see further refinement and extensions as the system matures in releases post 3.14. For the renderer, they continued working on transitions to Gen 12, numerous rendering issues were fixed, and editor support was improved. A driver bug on the 10 series GTX line that was affecting the computation of scattering queries was investigated and a workaround implemented. They are still clarifying whether this issue is a driver bug. If so, it can then be fixed properly. Now, the core engine team finalized a switch to Clang 11, which is used to compile the game server, along with code vectorization and math optimizations enabled. The memory tracker was improved to detect reallocation of memory that's not allocated. Support for a new profiler front-end was added, along with various improvements and optimizations on relevant engine components to utilize the profiler to its full capabilities. The component update scheduler received support for multiple passes, and event handlers were separated from component updates. Finally, viz areas now use more fine-grained locking for updates to reduce contention, and the queuing of animation viz area updates are now lockless, as is event queuing. Anyway, moving on to gameplay features. Aside from the usual bug fixing and quality of life support, they added optional UI functionality to the firing range to give more detailed feedback to the player. They also wrote an editor tool to identify rogue entities that would cost performance and memory. A new task mode was added as well to allow NPCs to share their targets with the player. And finally, the team began designing a new system for development skip points, which allows developers to start the game at any point through any mission, which will also behave in a similar manner to the game save checkpoints. simplifying the whole setup and flow. The gameplay story team tested and documented new tech that should get trams and elevators working correctly in-game, which will allow them to play Chapter 5 from start to finish. They also updated various scenes in the mess hall and supported designers with their work on Chapters 12, 13 and 14. Now for the graphics and visual effects programming team, they completed work on window and ping CIG shaders. The window shader allows them to simulate the windows of static rooms without actually having to model the interior, enabling large buildings filled with fake interiors for minimal cost. This approach has been used in several other games, and while the visuals are naturally constrained compared to bespoke rooms, which are obviously costly regarding performance, the results are vastly better than just black or empty spaces. Now this ping CIG shader is the new version of the ping effect that is used for the updated radar and scanning feature. This creates waves that trigger various visual effects when they intersect solid geometry, such as an edge highlight. For Orison, improvements were made to the performance of real-time environment probes and improvements to the level of detail merger to support tint palettes, and wear was also completed to allow huge draw call savings for distant renderings of cities. I will say, as much as the frame rates for Orison can be somewhat desired, generally I do get a good solid frame rate, and I do have my clouds at medium, but only in certain areas does it drop into the low 20s. Most of the time it borders on the 30 frames, so they've done a good job there, but obviously more optimizations are on the way. So they have made improvements to the UI compositing and post-effect pipeline to achieve the specific look the team want, such as drop shadows, glow, brightness adaptation and color correction, while minimizing performance impact. They also added support for querying cloud densities from planets and used this to trigger a variety of effects. Several particle streaming issues were addressed, and the final bugs with the new lighting system were resolved, as well as the fire feature progressing well too. Both visual effects and graphics team made great progress on the Gen 12 renderer and Vulkan backends, with the vast majority of post effects now running Gen 12 by default. Now this doesn't result in major CPU performance savings, as the post effects were already cheap on the CPU side, though major benefits will be seen in scene rendering. Now onto level design, the space and dogfighting team continued with AI buddy spaceflight behaviors that mostly relate to Old Man Colton, that Mark Hamill character. They also updated existing chapters with the additional functionality for radar ping and scanning. Space-based stealth gameplay was built out too, meaning the player needs to be aware of their own emissions and cross-section to avoid being spotted. Hopefully this will also apply to Star Citizen in this patch, maybe 3.14 or 3.15. That'll be fun trying to practice that. The team also implemented scenes for the various chapters for review and sign-off, which now encompass all FPS crossover scenes that could switch into combat at any time. For the narrative team, they worked with design to go over the latest milestone goals and determine what support was needed to achieve them. This included walking through the latest iterations of levels to outline additional content. QA tested Vanduul behavior implementations for the AI team and performed an open bug sweep to ensure the QA databases were up to date. Very jealous that they're getting to see the Vanduul in action. The tech animations team R&D into streamlining the facial scan and scan creation pipelines was completed, with the outcome saving the art team's significant man hours over the coming years. This has formed the cornerstone in tech animation's own facial rig building process and will ultimately expedite the entire facial pipeline. That is one big win there. One main aim this quarter was to upgrade the head asset and facial animation system codebase, which is currently well underway. The team also managed to overhaul the weapons pipeline with a facelift and new tool sets to assist with technical elements. They also supported tech art in upgrading their export process, and once complete, they moved on to the skeletal optimization process that will improve character hitboxes when completed. Very happy to hear that these hitboxes are getting some love. Not that I've noticed anything wrong with Star Citizen's hitboxes, but any fine tuning here will be great to get it more accurately and physically replicated. Realistic in terms of where you're getting hit. Nothing worse than hiding behind cover but your hitbox is sticking out and you just can't see it. Now for the UI team, work continued on improving the underlying tech for the star map. Hopefully we'll get to see some progress on that one of these days. And they began investigating how the final version of the Mobiglass UI will look and move. That should be interesting in its own right. Finally, for visual effects, the team continued updating Squadron 42's location effects to make use of the new lighting model, with one flagship location being worked on for an internal milestone, and finally work continued on the internal space of a key location that makes great use of gas cloud tech. So that was the Squadron 42 monthly report. Again, big thank you to my techie friend for covering some of the engine stuff there, because a lot of it goes over my head, so breaking it down into more easy to digest information is much better. Something else that I wanted to mention about Squadron 42 is that with the video that Chris and Sandy did recently, Chris did mention that for the end of the year they plan to move over to the UK for next year to try and close out Squadron 42. Now this doesn't necessarily mean it will be released next year, it just means he's going there to try and close it out and get it finished. So we could see a potential release of Squadron at the end of 2022. Let's have our fingers crossed. I'm very excited by this news, and hopefully the briefing room videos can start up again, and if they do, then it is a clear sign that we are on the road to release. Anyway, that was Squadron 42's monthly report. The PU monthly report will be coming sometime this next week. And if you do find my videos useful, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also hit that like button if you don't mind, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. I stream 4 days a week. Often we cover things like the patch notes and talk about that kind of stuff, but I will certainly be playing a lot more 3.14 in the PTU, be that Wave 1, Wave 2 or Open. So if you do want to come and hang out with just the most amazing community ever, you are all more than welcome. The link is below. It is twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Ryan. Again, thank you to my patrons and channel members for all their support. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.